Kick off our program portfolio and grant making webinar today with a little bit of GOCO's background and history and our structure. So in the summer of 2021, for those of you who may not have interacted with us recently, GOCO launched a team of regional officers, me being one of them, to serve the state and be more of a local representation of our communities. This has allowed us to move more towards a relationship building and trust-based philanthropy. I'm the program officer for our West region, so Montrose and Uray are my southern portion of my region up to Moffat County in the Northwest. And I'll kick it over to the other regional officers here in a moment to introduce themselves. So Mike, if you want to start us off.
Hey everybody, Mike White. I'm the Southwest Program Officer with communities between the Utah boundary and the San Luis Valley, and then north up to San Miguel and Saguache counties, and I'm in Durango.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Obi. I am the Southern Front Range Program Officer. So I'm Douglas and Elbert County, south along the middle of the state there to Los Animas County at the New Mexico border, and I am based out of Colorado Springs.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Omasta. I'm the North Central Regional Officer here with GOCO, based in Buena Vista. My county extends from Gunnison and Chaffee on the south end there, up north to Routt and Jackson and the Wyoming border.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sammy Trotter, and I am the Eastern Colorado Programs Officer, and I cover the dark green counties that you see on the right from Wyoming to Oklahoma.
I'm Alex Castino, Northern Front Range Program Officer, and I cover the Northern Front Range kind of in the top center part of your map. And I also wanted to, Matt Brady could not join us today, but he regrets not being able to be here. But he is our Denver Metro Front Range Program Officer.
And Kylie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Kylie Yang, Programs Coordinator for GOCO, and I'll be controlling the PowerPoint today. But generally, I provide logistical support and general support for the programs team.
So GOCO launched a new strategic plan in 2020, and in 2021, a lot of those changes post-pandemic went into place, including the regional model. This plan had several changes that really started from a strategic planning process that used a deep dive into what we'll go over today. This change was part of a detailed planning process and outlined our values-based approach and put an emphasis on equity. Did and continue to do regular partner surveys, which revealed areas of improvement for us. This helps us stay nimble and making sure we're meeting partners where they need us to be while keeping within our mandated constitutional areas. And lastly, staff tenure and experience have helped create programs with partners in mind and outcomes in mind to help us keep driving our mission forward. So as I mentioned, we're shifting towards a values-based approach, and this has given us an equity lens to our evaluations and how we work and support local partners. We recognize these values can have different interpretations in different settings, and that was intentional. This allows communities to bring their projects in a culturally relevant way to represent their communities and not feel like it's being dictated to get funding. Community vitality, for example, can be the development of infrastructure that creates more social cohesion through community spaces, connections in the built environment for a healthier lifestyle, or it could be the development of an asset within the community that helps spur economic diversification by bringing in new industry. Similarly, equitable access in a community looks different depending on what your needs are. In some spaces, it may be adding universal structures to be inclusive of those with disabilities to play with their able-bodied friends. In other spaces, it might be the addition of bilingual or multilingual languages to better incorporate and break down barriers, or adding activities and programming through infrastructure and implementation that are more culturally relevant to populations that have historically been excluded from planning processes. Simply put, how and where can we break down barriers to provide more participation to the outdoors in our communities? Most projects will not have all values, and there will be some projects that the merit of one value will be strong enough to show that transformative impact to a community. Simply put, you don't have to have all of these values. You don't have to try to force it, but just where does it fit within your community? And Dan, I think I'll pass it off to you for a deeper dive into the portfolio.
Great, thanks, Katie. So based on the values and the partner feedback that Katie discussed, GOCO offers several different kinds of grant opportunities to support partners with diverse project types and outcomes. As you'll see, there are three main categories of funding available through our competitive funding quadrants, which include partner programs, which is on the screen now, special initiatives, and base programs. In the next few slides, we'll briefly provide some high-level details on each of these grant opportunities and really encourage our partners to be visiting our website and talking with your regional officer early and often. If another benefit of that is that if a project doesn't fit one of these programs, we can often make recommendations for other kinds of funding opportunities and resources. So it's always worth reaching out. So on the screen now is our partner programs slide, and these are administered outside of GOCO by other organizations with the intent of increasing efficiency for our various partners and leveraging additional dollars. Within this category, we have the Restore Colorado grant, which is a collaborative funding opportunity administered by our partners at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. The program leverages funding from over 10 other funders, including GOCO, to support large-scale cross-jurisdictional habitat restoration projects across the state, primarily focused on watershed health, grasslands and sagebrush ecosystems, and wildlife migration and connectivity. I'll also add that there is a growing opportunity for habitat restoration in urban areas. So we encourage folks who may have some ideas in that space to be reaching out. This application typically opens in mid-August with a deadline in November. The second partner program opportunity is the Conservation Service Corps program, which is administered through the Colorado Youth Corps Association and provides funding for corps to work on targeted projects such as trail development, invasive species control, fuels mitigation, restoration, and other efforts. These grants support a minimum of 2-week-long hitches that can address both one-off opportunities as well as longer-term initiatives. We suggest that interested applicants are connecting with their local youth corps early to get on their calendar, as well as see if the project is a good fit for the capacity of their crews. This program and this application typically opens in June. The last partner program is the Transaction Cost Assistance Program, which is administered through our partners at Keep It Colorado, and is available to nonprofit land trusts to cover transaction costs associated with conservation easements. This is a really great opportunity to reduce the financial barriers for land trusts and landowners who wish to conserve their lands, but may be unable to front the rising costs associated with the conservation easement process. This application will open August 1st this year and will close on August 27th with an award date in December. And more information there can be found at Keep It Colorado. We also have our special opportunities, which are a part of every 5-year spending plan here at GOCO. And the goal is to offer a series of special initiatives to address unique opportunities on the landscape. Under this current plan, we offer Generation Wild and the Centennial Program. And I'll note that both of these programs are currently not available for this coming year. However, there will be similar kinds of opportunities under the new strategic plan that will kick off in 2025. So we're encouraging folks to be continuing to think about these opportunities, thinking big, and really, again, talking with your program officer. So under this plan, we supported the Generation Wild program, which helps propel Colorado's youth and outdoor movement by investing in communities made up of local public, nonprofit, and private organizations, focused on creating new outdoor experiences and opportunities for historically underserved and underrepresented youth and families. We're continuing to support established communities as well as offering planning dollars for emerging ones. You can find more information about Generation Wild and these communities in your area by visiting generationwild.com, as well as connecting with your regional officer. We also offered the Centennial Program, which was designed to make large investments in high-value, once-in-a-generation projects that have lasting impacts on the state and future generations. Some of the recently funded projects through this program include the Highline Canal, Peaks to Plains, and Eagle Valley Regional Trails, a statewide 14er stewardship initiative, and the acquisition and protection of key areas like Mount Tom in Jefferson County and Heaven's Door Ranch in Larimer County. While details are not finalized, we expect to continue making these kinds of large investments in these high-value projects in the next strategic plan. And so again, we're encouraging partners to continue to think big and be having these conversations with your regional officer. So with that, I will pass it over to Alex Castino to talk about our base programs.
Thanks, Dan. So our base program portfolio was really inspired and informed, well, all the programs really were, but particularly the base programs by those values, program values that Katie elevated that drives our work under the strategic plan. And so you'll see a lot of those reflected here in what we hope to accomplish on the ground through these programs. But I'll run through them a little bit and we'll talk about what makes a project competitive in these programs. So we have land acquisition, of course, GOCO's bread and butter, supporting landscape, waterway, habitat, public access, land protection priorities, and that can look like fee acquisitions, conservation easements, even not specifically called out here, but park acquisitions, parkland, even trail corridors and others. So really pretty broad program around acquiring land for our outdoor recreation and open space needs. Then we have community impact, which is really where we see most of the requests and have historically. This is what we historically would have referred to as local parks and outdoor recreation, LPOR program. Kind of absorbs all those projects, as well as trails. So parks, of course, trails, splash pads, any of those, what you might think of as really serving a community in outdoor recreation needs is going to be falling into this program. And so, yeah, the community aspect of it, we'll talk a bit more on the next slide, but the community aspect of it is really important from our perspective to be driving these projects. Stewardship impact is a newer program that is meant to support collaborative stewardship work, as it says here, and really looking to have those on the ground impacts as it relates to ecological and recreational amenities. And then planning and capacity is kind of a catch-all where we're looking for planning, capacity, research, education, all those types of projects that really are providing the background for a lot of our other work. And we also support through this program a pathway opportunity for diverse and non-traditional young adults to get a foot in the door in the outdoor industry. So yeah, as folks have said already, talk to your regional officer about any ideas you have in these spaces, and we're happy to chat. And just as general guidance, as we get into what makes projects competitive in this space, firstly, our grant agreements, our grants generally run between 2 and 3 years. So you'll want to make sure that your project can be completed in that time frame, as well as just that the project being put forward is really the highest and best use of GOCO funds in the community, just because we are stretched fairly thin. We have over 500 eligible entities just in the local government space. And so we really want to make sure that we're investing in the highest priority project in each community. A few of the key elements of being competitive for GOCO funding. Well, first of all, I want to share that GOCO operates on a reimbursement basis with a single payment upon project completion. We do have some flexibility there, but we cannot, generally speaking, I don't even know an instance when we were able to put a full grant forward at the time of the expense. We have to do it as a reimbursement at grant closeout. We do have interim payments, but not the full amount. We want to generally make space for large and small projects here. So generally we use different language as regional officers, but we're looking to invest in transformative projects in community, and that can look different in different types of communities. And like I said, really thinking about what's the greatest investment that GOCO can make to make the most impact in your community. It's helpful to consider also the amount of funding we have available, which is 19 million. So when you think about, what it costs to put in a regional park, trail, et cetera, these days, we have to stretch that pretty thin to invest in great projects. And so it's helpful to consider that when you're scoping your project, while keeping in mind that we do try to advance those greater opportunities, like Dan was saying, within each strategic plan. And then I'll just share also around the competitiveness that we generally receive between 30 and 40 concepts per cycle and advance about half of those, maybe less than half, to full application. We'll talk about the process a little bit later, but just so you're aware of how competitive it is. And might fund about a dozen. So it really is quite pared down, and we're even having conversations ahead of concept to make sure that the most competitive projects are coming in and saying no early to avoid, anybody spinning their wheels through our process. So it is fairly competitive. We also, when appropriate, encourage folks to contemplate community engagement early and often. And that looks different in each community. So it really is best to consult with your regional officer about what we might be looking for each type of project. Ideally, community impact projects are fairly community centered. But yeah, your regional officer can provide successful examples. We're 4.5 years into the strategic plan, so we really do have some good examples to point to at this point. With successful tactics we can help you with. And then the equity piece, we're really looking for folks who have not traditionally had a voice in or a place, a comfortable place in our outdoor spaces and outdoor recreation amenities to elevate to their voices to be elevated. So we're looking for youth-led, resident-led opportunities. It's always helpful to connect with organizations that are already working in community and have those trusted relationships, community-based partners. They're already doing this work and they can help with connecting community and with your work. Just generally encourage collaborations and partnerships, and community connectors can be a really great way to connect in that way too. So I'll hand it over to Mike to talk about a little bit more of the specifics around the dollars here.
Thanks, Alex. I'll just note that for GOCO's fiscal year 2025, which is beginning July of 2024. So right now, we're going to have 3 grant cycles for our base programs. And it's worth noting that the funding that supports these first 4 programs on this list comes from GOCO's open space and local government purpose areas. As for the funding ranges, our land acquisition proposals do not have a cap. However, we often see a range between $750,000 and $1.5 million on average coming in under this grant program. For community impact, your proposals should range from $100,000 to up to $1 million. For stewardship impact proposals, those would range from between $100,000 and $300,000. And our planning and capacity proposals also don't have a cap, but we commonly see proposals in the $200,000 to $500,000 range. In areas where we've got minimum and maximum guidance for our grant programs, we do want to remain flexible. And as Alex stated, we want to hear about your ideas, both big and small, to make change in your community. In general, these are parameters, and conversations with folks like us, the regional officers, will help you hone in on the right kind of amount. In terms of match and leverage, we don't have a required percentage of match on a particular base program grant. But, it's worth noting that match and leverage do play an important role in our grant review and consideration. In general, we like to see that matching funds represent available resources in your community and for a specific project type. Matching funds show that applicants are taking a comprehensive approach in their fundraising, and in-kind support is really encouraged. The representation of local partnerships that can be showcased through both match, leverage, and in-kind often provides reviewers confidence in the community support for a particular project. On the topic of funding and funding ranges and the match, I'd like to highlight we're in discussion about adjustments to our strategic plan that'll start in 2026. And over the next year, we're looking at partner feedback and feedback from communities to make recommended changes to our strategy in response to what we're seeing on the landscape, current trends, and feedback from folks like yourselves. In general, we intend to keep the same grant programs in our next 5-year strategic plan rather than develop something entirely new. In terms of who can apply to GOCO's grant programs, the eligible applicants were identified in the constitutional amendment in 1992 that helped form our organization. And those remain static to this day. That's a Colorado municipality or county, Title 32 special district that's eligible to receive distributions from the Conservation Trust Fund, a political subdivision of the state that includes in its mission the identification, acquisition, or management of open space and natural areas, and 501c3 nonprofit land conservation organizations that include in the mission as well the identification, acquisition, and lastly, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It's worth mentioning that at GOCO here, we really encourage partnerships between ineligible entities and those that are eligible in order to access GOCO dollars for a project that's a good fit for our values and the grant program at hand. In some limited circumstances, we can consider funding ineligible entities, but this is really a case-by-case basis and rare rather than common. A few stewardship organizations that are working cross-boundary have partnered effectively with counties and local governments, as well as working at the local level. And a couple examples of where we've been able to, grant awards to ineligible entities recently includes the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, the Rocky Mountain Field Institute, and the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, in particular because these last two are working at scale across a broad landscape rather than under, say, the jurisdiction or within the boundaries of a particular county or city. And with that, I will pass it over to Sammy.
All right, I will be talking about our grant making process. You can go ahead and advance, Kylie, to that next slide. Thank you very much. Program officers are on-the-ground resources and available to you. We highly encourage you, as you've heard multiple times today, to contact us early and often to discuss everything from general funding opportunities and processes to in-depth community engagement efforts that are being deployed in your community and everything in between. We are available to review concept and application drafts and budgets at any point, and we routinely take your project and this information to programs team discussions to give you comprehensive feedback prior to submission. Following the review of both concepts and applications, we have the chance to connect with you to receive detailed feedback and guidance for the next steps and recommendations. And these meetings are typically conducted with multiple program officers to ensure that you fully understand how best to move forward with your project. It's important to note that our granting process from the time that you initially contact your program officer to funds being awarded after contracting is often a 6+ month process. So this needs to be taken into account as you are planning the timeline of your project implementation and as you are considering the appropriate submission cycle on our grant calendar. So as we walk through our grant making process, after contacting and working with your regional program officer, you will submit your project concept. This is a 2-page narrative with a budget and supporting documents. Concepts are reviewed internally by the program's team with competitive concepts invited to the application stage. Applications are an expansion of your narrative to 6 pages, and you'll be asked to provide additional supporting documents, including a CPW wildlife review form, a resolution, and letters of support. We do encourage you to take a look at the both the CPW wildlife review form and the resolution early, as both of these forms require a process that could take some time, and we want to make sure that you're not stressing getting that ready for the application submission. The application review process will be conducted by the program's team with the addition of external peer reviewers who are experts in their field and who help to provide in-depth and technical knowledge of the projects being considered. Based on this review, the program's team makes a funding recommendation to the GOCO Programs Committee, who then makes their funding recommendation to the GOCO board for final approval and official awarding of funds to selected projects. As Alex mentioned earlier, this process is very competitive, and we are making tough decisions along the way as it moves through this process. Your regional program officer will walk you through this process step by step, giving you regular updates on the status of your project, and projects selected for funding will be connected to a grants officer to complete the contracting and then be walked through the funding disbursement process.
So I'm going to wrap us up here. Thanks everyone for that great information. Now to our partners to access all of this information, it's available on our website, goco.org. On that page will be our grant calendar. And then under each of the grant programs, there will be all the program materials for concepting. Our budget form templates are available on these pages, as well as those additional documents that would be needed at the application stage, like the wildlife review form, and also a template for a resolution. You can also find a link to our map of the regional officers and all of our contact information, because your first step will be, of course, reaching out to us to begin those conversations. So thank you so much for joining us today.